Back in 2017, Prof. Matimba came to South Africa to give a lecture on the decolonization of the mind. So the title of the lecture was Secure the Base, Decolonize the Mind. During that lecture, he told a very interesting and educational story. He told a story about rats. So there was an experiment conducted on a generation of rats, which he used to indicate some of the habits that are still evident in Africa as far as our minds are concerned. So this generation of rats were being conditioned mentally using electrical shock. Every time these rats go to a particular space, they were given electrical shock, pain. And then every time they went to another particular space, they were given a reward, which is pleasure. So this was ongoing until the rats internalized that they have to avoid certain spaces and they have to pursue certain spaces. You know, every time the rat maybe is moving around, it wants to go to a particular corner, it remembers that, oops, there's pain here, I need to avoid this. And then it runs to another corner where there's reward. Okay, fine. The first generation of rats was exposed to that. The second generation of rats was not exposed to the conditioning through electrical shock. Obviously, as they come, this second generation, they blend with the first generation, and then the mannerism, the habits are formed, as they grow in that environment. Every time they go to that particular spot, somehow they avoid it and go to that particular spot of pleasure. It went on with the second, with the third generation. The second and the third and the forthcoming generations, the other coming generations, there was no introduction of electrical shock to them, but the behavior, the habit was there. It was internalized. Prof even went on to say that it got to a point where the behavior was so mechanically the same, as though they were also exposed to the same shock, but they don't know. They were never exposed to the shocks. He was giving that scenario to indicate that the damage of colonialism in Africa is so deep that even though the mechanisms of colonialism or of oppression of the past are no longer visible to us, the outcome, the conditioning, especially of the mind, is still evident with us today. One more point that he said, before I get to the main point that I want to raise. Prof said that it gets to a point where the generations which come later, they don't know why they don't go to that particular space. They start to develop theories in their minds about why they are not going there. Trying to explain their being, trying to explain their conditioning, which they don't know it came from. If colonialism was done right, you see it by it being omnipresent, forever present. Even if it was hundreds of years ago, it's still present even today, because it travels not through the policies that were drafted then, not through the systems that were drafted back in or were put in place back in the days. No, it transcends through time, through the minds of the colonized. But I don't want to go deep into that. I want to talk about the anniversary of Think Black Act Black and how it links to that story I just shared from Prof. Matimba Mkansi, who's considered the father of decolonization. In fact, he wrote a book in 1986, I think, Decolonization of the Mind, Politics of Language. And It's quite an interesting book, talking about these things that we try to engage with on a daily basis. So, we are celebrating 5 years of Think Black, Act Black, which is my first book, which I published in 2017. So to summarize, because I've been receiving a lot of questions, to summarize, this time around, what is Think Black, Act Black? In the context of that story, Think Black, Act Black realizes that we are here today. We are African today. We've got conditions, we've got habits that we have adapted from our environment, from our families, from our, the spaces we find ourselves in. And we do not know some of these habits, where they come from. But somehow, these habits affect our well-being, our actions, our decisions, So the idea of Thinking Black is to now try to question, hoping to find that electrical shock which conditioned us over the generations, so that we can be able to understand why we avoid a certain corner. What is this corner we're avoiding? A corner of self-pride. A corner of self-belief that, yes, you can build an economic system. Why do we keep chasing the corner of self-doubt? The corner of inferiority, of feeling inferior rather, not inferior, the corner of constantly feeling inferior. The corner of constantly, or the space of constantly, when you find a pedestal, you automatically choose the one and say, I think I belong here. We are trying to, when we're thinking black, we are trying to get back into that electrical shock. How did we get to this mentality that we have today as African people? Because there is a cause, and we shouldn't pretend that this is supposed to be something easy to overcome. No, just be proud, just be black, just be confident. No. It's deep. It's very deep, which is why I encourage us, or those who are willing to say, think black, act black, meaning that try to think, who are you as a black person? How did you get here? What is your greatest potential? And how can you put that into action to liberate yourself, to free yourself? In a nutshell, that's more about it. It's about questioning the environment, questioning the habit. Why am I doing this? Why is it that constantly I have to remove my hair when I go to work in these particular spaces? I don't know, but somehow I have an explanation of why every Monday or every Sunday I'm cutting my hair and trimming it. It's not right, it's not wrong, but the motivation behind, if you dig deeper, you might realize that, for example, the conditioning of the past, which said that this kinky hair is messy, is not clean, is not worthy to be in this space, it has to be washed, it has to be straightened, it might have been the electrical shock. I am not saying that's the case, but I'm saying that there could be a possibility for some of the habits that we are doing. No, Mina, I just like to ensure that I do this, I just like these chemicals, they help my skin to be smooth, What if the electrical shock in that case is because a long time ago, someone told you that your skin was too dark, but you don't know how to explain it because you're not in that generation. You inherited the habit. I think science is not my thing, I think, me, I'm an artist, I'm gifted with the pen, I can draw and all that. Somehow, satellites, this thing of space station, that's not my thing, drama, it's not my thing, Like Vele, like us, Vele, we are left brain, not right brain, or right brain, not left brain. What if somewhere in that generation of electrical shock, someone said, no, you are not smart enough. You belong in teaching. You belong in nursing. You belong in policy, engineering. No. Like, come on, bruh. your IQ is not good enough. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm saying, what if that generation of electrical shock said, no, you can't be a scientist. What do you know about anything beyond the sky, beyond the clouds? It requires superior intelligence for someone to get beyond, the ozone layer and all those layers all the way to the space station. You stick to drawing, you stick to music, the DJ, hip hop, your thing, clip it, do your thing there. Wada, rap. Do your painting there and just showcase them. No, don't interfere with science. Science has got its people, the brains which are developed, civilized. And then generations later, you are very, let's question why certain spaces, and why are we avoiding other spaces? So think black is question, think, why am I doing this? Why? To what end? So that we can act black. When we are informed, when we are informed, we begin to act in the manner in which we have learned recently. So that is the idea of thinking black. We constantly question. There is a quote here in the book which a friend of mine, Sylvia, quoted on your WhatsApp. I don't remember which chapter was it. I wrote this book. Yeah, I wrote it, but I don't remember. It should be in something to do with the mind. So this quote talks about, I'll find it. It talks about a wall. When a wall is built and allowed to dry, to take it down will require more strength that was involved in building it. But now it has dried, it has become strong. So the effort required to take it down is not the same effort which was involved in the building or the construction of this wall. What I was trying to say here is that in order to decolonize the mind, in order to liberate ourselves, we cannot expect that the same effort that was involved in the first generation, within context, I hope you understand what I mean by first generation. Within the first generation should be the same effort that is applied today. Today it takes more time. It takes more effort, it takes more commitment, because the wall in our minds has become dry and it's hard, so it needs more effort. So our generation has a lot of work to do, to question. Anyway, as you celebrate the curriculum is my second book, sorry. As you celebrate 5 years of Think Black, Act Black, there were comments, there were questions from my readers, people who have read the book, people who own a copy of the book, and actually some who have not yet bought the book, they have questions. I would like to start with Dr. Dondani Mpephu. I'm starting with her because she gave more comments. It was not questions, it was comments mostly. So just give me a moment. Yeah, there we go. She gave comments, so I don't think she has questions here. She's a very critical thinker. Yeah? Every time she opens her mind, her mouth, you wonder what's coming. You have to be prepared, because she's critical. So she gave comments regarding the book, Think Black, Act Black, as we celebrate 5-year anniversary. She said, for me, with the title Think Black, Act Black, I thought after reading the book I will be a comrade of some sort. However, I found the message inside to have transcended the ideology of just blackness. To me, it's a book that simply challenges our thinking and approach to things. For example, the passage about beauty and the changing the eyes of which you see yourself. I think even a white girl struggles, or a white girl who's struggling with beauty issues can learn a thing from that passage. Yes, she's answering for me, because there are other questions with regard to the book. People are asking whether this book is intended for black audience only, or if other races can also participate in engaging with this content. That is a first comment. A second comment, she said, also, one can use same passage and take it further to use it even in workplace. We dim our light and talent to fit in with the group. We are sometimes scared to excel or do extraordinary work because we live in a culture that normalizes the laziness. So a hard worker who will go extra miles at work will be viewed as a snob or just be excluded. But one can have a mentality of changing the eyes of the perception, which I cover in the book, and do what they are being called to do. Called to do. Yeah. I think this is very powerful. Where, she highlights that we come from a culture which normalizes laziness. This is fascinating for me. When I hear this, I'm saying, where is the first generation? What is the electrical shock that conditioned us to this point in time? Dr. Tondani goes on with the last quote, and she says, I also recall a passage where you talked about how back then community used to come together to plow and harvest. I don't remember it exactly where it is in the book. It's in the chapter on You Are Government. Yeah, I think it's You Are Government. The government is not your mother. There's a chapter there which called You Are Government. I don't remember exactly where it is, but the message was about not waiting for the government to be your savior. For me, that message can be used in different life situations. Just a mentality of doing what you can do with what you have is a game changer for all individuals across all race, gender, and economic statuses. So in summary, the book is a book that calls one to change their thinking. And everything stems from our mind. So the book deserves to be read by all nations. Wow, this is beautiful. Thank you, Dr. Tondani Piepu. Yes, I'm not sure if I'm making a mistake by mentioning your name, but I'm sure you'll have told me. There's no harm in said it there. What I'm about to say, it's my words, so it's not yours, so you are safe. Yeah, thank you. That is the first comment. So she says that the knowledge contained in Think Black, Act Black transcends race, of which could be true, because the knowledge that we seek in order to advance our lives, in order to transform our conditions, cannot be just be, knowledge that comes from nowhere. It is still knowledge that governs other people. But here I'm placing it in context because I think in our spaces as African people, there's an urgency for it. So I had to be deliberate about it, but I do agree with you. The knowledge here does transcend race. So I'm answering some of the questions that are still coming, whether this book is suitable for for other people? And then my response to that is yes. I've been asked this question before, the one which says, is this book or the content of this book suitable for white people? And my response was, even if it doesn't apply to them directly, we are in a country, which is called the Rainbow Nation in South Africa. And globally, we are blending. We are blending. Some people are half Chinese, half Korean, half American, half African. We are blending. We are blending, and the globalization, we can no longer live separately. So, in order for us to thrive in such an environment as people, it's very paramount, I believe, that we get to expose ourselves to the traditions, the challenges, the struggles of other people, so that we can be able to understand them. I read this on some picture I saw on Facebook. I'm not sure it's in Denmark or what, where they say that they have a library where the books are humans. You go into the library, you find a human, you sit there, you ask them questions about themselves, where they come from and all that, and you read them basically, through them telling you their story. And I think that is one of the most brilliant ideas that the human race could come with, because you sit there and you read this book, which is a person from another race, from another background, from another country, from another political system, different struggles, and you get to understand them, so that you can say, I understand why you do what you do. I understand, as a black person, why you are so obsessed with your development. It's because you have been oppressed for thousands, hundreds of years. It feels like thousands, for 500 years through colonialism, and you have been denied your development. And I understand why constantly you seek to self-develop. You constantly seek to improve your conditions. You constantly seek to affirm your image because it was destroyed. I understand. So yes, if we are the human race, people from other races can engage with us and say, I want to know where you're coming from as a person. So that is one motivation which I believe we should read beyond our spaces. I read, okay, there was a time where I was involved in reading African literature, especially because I discovered that there was a huge class within, not African, Afrikaans literature, Afrikaans, the Boer. There is a class within the Afrikaans community which is called the precariat class. And I was shocked, these are supposed to be landowners. How do we have precariat there? So precariat class means that when someone belongs to the precariat class, it means they don't belong, or they can't fit into the normal class, the lower class, poor class, blah, blah, blah. They don't fit into that category, either because they are too educated and they can't find a job, too poor, they can't access certain spaces. You cannot classify them, because they are unique, and their challenges are not, classified in theory or in literature already. What now they are, Professor Guy Standing, you can check him out, he has outlined what the precariat class is all about. So I would like to simplify, they will forgive me if I'm bashing this philosophy. I would like to simplify and say the precariat class is a class of extreme people, possibly extremely educated, can't fit in the job market, extremely poor, can't qualify for anything. So these are extreme people who do not necessarily fit into the middle class, upper class, and all those things. So I was shocked. I'm like, wow, the Boers, they are struggling like this. And then I read about it, and then I read about how they obviously conquered us, the systems they put in place. Niels Bernard, for example, who was head of intelligence, I read about how they conquered the Kafir. How did they study the mentality? So what I'm trying to say here is you go beyond yourself in order to understand the other person, for whatever reason, but it's very important. Yeah. So I don't encourage being close-minded for the name of blackness. You know, this is, for me, is a necessary step, you know, to grow as black people, but not to be shattered from the rest of the world. Of course, other people will disagree with that. Let's move on. Don't have enough time. So I will cover one question. Excuse me. And the rest, I will cover them in the next video. Like I said, this is the month of Think Black, Act Black. We are celebrating 5 years of thinking black, acting black, developing the psychology of self-reliance. I will cover one question from how did you manage to get so many people to come listen to you? This is Tabang Mavala is asking about, my handwriting is ugly, don't zoom me. We think fast, so our handwriting can't catch up. How did you manage? So I had a lecture in 2018 where I was giving, basically I was giving a lecture on this, making sure that those who don't want to read or who can't read, who don't have time to read, get access to the knowledge. So we had at least, in the lecture, we had at least, okay, so the auditorium we booked had 150 seats. There were people sitting on the floor. So it was packed for my first lecture. I'm going to have another lecture on the curriculum of Black Excellence in October. That is the plan. Yeah, those who were there must come back and invite their friends. How did you manage to get so many people to come listen? Mr. Mabala, I won't claim it's because, yeah, I'm good or, yeah, I'm popular. No. I think, because I was shocked when I walked into the lecture venue and there were people. Some were 2 hours early. You know, I remember Celso from Brazil. He was there at 4 and we were starting around 5, 6, somewhere there. We started at 6 and he stayed. And another thing which is surprising or amazing was that no one left during the lecture. It was maybe 1 or 2. Everyone stayed until the end. You know, so to me, it's because our generation is realizing that there is a need for knowledge. You know, so every time there is knowledge, they go after it. They are go-getters, I would like to say. They go after it. They don't want to wait to be told. So they saw the poster, they saw the adverts, and they said, you know what, we have to be part of this lecture. Because it was unique. I can argue and say it was unique. You know, it was not a normal lecture. Think black, act black. So, and it was in spaces where you wouldn't expect to see it. So that could have said, why so much bold words? Think black, act black. What is that? You know, so that is the best explanation I can provide. They were hungry for knowledge, and mostly it was students. Even though people drove from all over, you know, Gauteng, they drove from all over Gauteng to Braamfontein. The working class now, they were there, and they still talk about this lecture even today. I would like to believe that this knowledge is needed, you know, or this probing information, because now if I claim that it's universal, then I'll be lying, but you know, it's probing, so it gets you informed in a certain way. It's needed. That is the best explanation that I can give, Mr. Mavala. So there is more questions. Unfortunately, it is the issue of time. I have to move on to another meeting, so I have to, like, I had like an hour, so I need to use the next 15 minutes to prepare for the next meeting. But I will make time again to cover. There are more questions. Some are controversial, some are deep, some are nice. Yeah, so I will cover all that, but just remember, it's Think Black, Act Black month. June 12th, 2017, I published this book, so we're celebrating. As I conclude, what are the electrical shocks in your life that are continuing to affect your behavior today. Thank you so much. Until next time, bring the questions, bring in the comments about the book. If you have questions, I'm looking forward to engaging with you. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Think black, act black.